Descent into Darkness, a Call of Cthulhu campaign. Hello and welcome back to Deathwatch's Call of Cthulhu campaign, Descent into Darkness, Season 4, Episode 10, and I am Keeper Travis. Today we return to the dusty road in French Syria, where Mr. Thompson and Mr. Wentworth look at the corpse of Thaddeus Grunwald as it slumps in the passenger seat of the car. Much of his nose and right eye is gone, leaving a gaping wound that connects with his mouth. His left eye is intact and glassy, perhaps holding the ghost of thoughts about locusts. Both of you are war experienced and know well the personality destruction that battle brings to those who are killed and wounded. In the movies and stories, wounds are clean and hidden from view, often leaving the dying a few moments to utter something more profound than their excitement over insects. Not so for young Thaddeus. It would be a closed casket funeral, leaving the bereaved to fumble at memories of his face that can never quite be recovered. On the battlefield, a soldier is prepped for his death before it comes. His name is given way to his rank. His style of dress matches all the other meat for the grinder. His will is subdued by training so that he becomes nearly an animal of instinct. In this way, he's halfway to a statistic before dying in battle. It is a different thing to look at a ditch with an entire platoon of men chewed up by mortar fire than one university student dead in the car, a world away from where he's supposed to be. And so, this convoy to Haifa has become the funeral procession for the late Thaddeus Grunwald. But before we return to that, let us get an introduction from our investigators.
I'm Brandon. I'll be playing Bartholomew Wentworth. Right now I am about to execute one of the people responsible for the death of young Thaddeus Grunwald.
It was off-screen.
Off-screen.
Fade to
We
black.
just saw
Oh, no.
birds fly away.
Oh, yeah, birds. Don't want to fade to black on execution.
He lived?
Oh, I'm Chris. I played Charles Stanton, big game hunter and guide, and I'm sitting in a hotel room for like a week almost, and my trigger finger's getting itchy.
Right.
I am
jazz musicians.
We are.
Yeah, nice.
And we are playing Joseph Thompson. That's about as good as an entrance as you can get.
So, Mr. Wentworth, now that the dust has settled after a pitched battle with brigands, you have a couple of problems to solve. First, there are two wounded men. One is a driver for the Taurus Express who is unconscious and bleeding out from a neck wound, although he is not technically, your problem. The other, one of the two geologists from Standard Oil of New Jersey, is shot in the leg and will likely need some medical attention, and he is most definitely your problem. Then there is the corpse of Thaddeus Grunwald. He was a 22-year-old biologist from Miskatonic University, a young man will likely have living relatives somewhere who will want some explanation, and his body and effects. Next, most of the folks on the convoy are rattled from the attack, aside from yourself, Mr. Thompson, who have experienced war, and Dr. Morgan. The rest of the passengers are arguing and hollering about what has occurred, or simply shocked and silent. Dr. Morgan seems unhappy with the frontier justice, but you reckon that is the proper response for most civil humans. Besides, happiness doesn't often factor into it. From your brief conversations, the man must understand that these things happen. Young Curtis Cooper, on the other hand, has a white and dazed expression that you have seen countless times when the young are first born in blood. The camera mount around his neck is forgotten at the moment. The French army private is making up for lost time as he orders all the passengers to get to their vehicles while telling the drivers to check that the cars are functional, including turning to speak to the unconscious driver and then just having a puzzled expression. He asked for a couple volunteers to drag the bodies of the snipers back. However, he He is distracted by an angry and red-in-the-face Mr. Whiteman, who is threatening to sue the Taurus Express, the French army, and the President of France, if need be. There's a smattering of other passengers not associated with your group who are part of this leg of the Taurus Express, but who had you guys had kind of pulled ahead while they stopped to do some minor repair. But their cars finally arrive, and if you want to give me a spot hidden.
As both of us or just him?
Just Wentworth. So yeah, you just see the rest of the passengers. They weren't part of your expedition, but they get out of the car and they're shouting ahead, "What's the holdup? We just got this thing fixed." And then their shouts are quieted when they kind of start to puzzle together what had happened. So anyhow, there you are with all this going on. What would you like to do?
Well, we got to get everybody calmed down. So I'll jump up on top of the truck so everybody can see me. And I'll say, the attack's over. Everybody calm down. We'll be on our way shortly. See to the wounded. Got a man shot in the leg and a man shot in the neck. Is there a doctor nearby? Anybody have any medical training?
Give me a luck roll.
Hard success.
Yeah, there's a man from the late coming car who raises his hand and comes forward, like a small Turkish man by the look of him. He has a medical case. What do we decide those were called? I forget.
Yeah, I can't remember anymore.
Gladstone bag,
yeah,
right?
That's right.
Yeah, he's got that, and he comes up to attend first to the man shot in the neck.
Yeah.
I have a NPC named the Stranger, who grows more powerful every time I need an unplanned NPC single one-off skill roll.
Wouldn't be a bad idea.
So he starts applying some first aid
Oh, no.
to the driver.
He's going to get tray panned like my Russian sniper.
Yeah.
But he looks up at you
My
and just kind of gives you a silent
first aid is
nod.
better than his. I'm a doctor now, too.
You can give it a shot if you'd want. You can see it's mostly about...
Hard success to say, no, you're doing it all wrong. Get out of here.
Yeah, look.
And then if he protests, you just look at him with those dead eyes.
Like, what are you doing with the saw? You don't need a saw.
He was just applying Neosporin to
He's got some petroleum
It says
gel
that
in
it cures all wounds, though.
triple antibiotic action. Right, that's our first ad right there. Okay, well done. You're able to basically stop the bleeding, or you can stop the bleeding for now. You have to, make sure that artery gets closed up there. Otherwise, he will certainly die. And in this case, you've just taken something out of his Gladstone bag and stuffed it in there. But he will live for another hour at least. But he'll need more serious medical attention.
Okay, well, so then I'll work on getting everybody back on the road then. And so I'll have to get some people to help me. We'll wrap up Thaddeus and put him in the back so we can send his body back once we get to the next, where we're going to.
It's called Haifa, I
Yeah.
think.
They ought to have
Right.
somebody who knows what to do with a dead body, right?
Most places do.
Mm-hmm.
You got that French soldier. He's still calling for some volunteers to go walk out there and drag the other corpses back.
No, we don't need those. We don't.
Well,
I mean, what's the point?
I need to bring him back. Well, do you understand French?
No. Is he speaking in French?
Yeah, for the most part, but he has some broken English. So he's able to call for help to go get these people. But when you guys start talking to each other more, it's a little bit more difficult to understand and complicate. Like he's trying to tell you, you get the idea that, well, you can give me a psychology roll.
I'll tell him we need to get back on Lay Road.
I understand lay perfectly.
Oh, I'll use 3 luck.
Okay. So to bring his little story into focus, he behaved as a coward when your truck came under attack. And you expect he's trying to maybe cover that up by bringing back a few dead corpses of brigands to show off to his superiors, maybe with a slightly altered story of what had occurred here.
Right.
So that's why he wants to get the corpses as proof that this actually did occur.
Well, if you can get them by the time we're moving, that's fine. But we're leaving without you if you can't. And then I'll tell everybody that you're a coward. I'll pull out my knife and threaten him. But no, I guess, if somebody wants to help him with those, that's not my priority. So I'll be seeing to the wounded and trying to get everybody back so we can get moving.
Looking at your expedition members, they're like, in different states, but also that's not my problem, right? His gaze casts over you, Mr. Thompson, with a pleading expression. Will you help this young French soldier?
What, go collect bodies?
Yeah, he wants to go drag the snipers back. So
they were about 70 yards off. At least when you shot them, they were.
Leave them to the desert. 'Cause I don't think we need them. Why do you want them?
Well, you can give a psychology roll.
Well, he
says something about a report, right? He needs them for the report.
Yeah.
It's an extreme success.
Mm.
Okay. You get the gist of it. I mean, you weren't paying. You had your own problems to worry about, obviously, during the battle. But you did see him just cowering there by that truck which he was driving, where your gun was stored. So you think he's just trying to come up with a way to have a better story than...
Yeah, I don't think that we have the time. There's 2 men that we need urgent medical attention, and the desert will do for those that are out.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, he just throws his hands up and curses a bit in French, but otherwise walks off defeated.
Get back in the late truck.
Don't go further than
Claude, right? That's
Claude.
70
back
yards.
in your truck, Claude.
Or else you're gonna be at short range.
Right. You call Germans Fritz back then, right? They're all Fritz. Was it Claude? I think all French.
Claude.
Claude or
Jacques. I don't
Frog
know.
or something. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, you're able to get everybody in line, and the wounded people are cared for. The doctor is able to do the first aid competently on the leg wound, but Thompson, you have to kind of stand or stay right with the other wounded guy to keep, the appropriate pressure going before you can get somewhere where actual surgery can be done. So you load in in the back of that truck with all the other expedition supplies and suitcases and whatnot, with that driver laying flat and just attending to him now and then. But other than that, the convoy gets rolling again, and you guys arrive in Haifa, which is an industrial port town with a strong British military presence. The area that this town is currently known as Mandatory Palestine, and in recent years has seen an influx of immigration from the Jewish how do you say that word? I should have looked up the pronunciation. Diaspora?
Yeah, diaspora.
Diaspora? Yeah. It's one of those ones I only read.
So we're in what is now Israel?
No, yeah, sure. Yep, that's correct. It's currently known as Mandatory Palestine, but yeah, it will be Israel in the future. You see almost an equal mix of mosques and Orthodox Christian churches, as well as these new Jewish temples that have been put up by the influx of Jews. You can give a hard history roll if any of you guys have history when you arrive here.
Okay. No.
It's not a success for me. I still don't consider it a failure, but it's not a success. I like to stay positive.
Yeah, good to be.
It's a good way to think. Okay, so yeah, you don't know this place from any of these other towns you've passed through in the Fertile Crescent here, but Dr. Morgan, who's now in the car that you guys share, I don't know if you shuffled it around so other lesser passengers could be in the gore-filled car with...
Nah.
Well, he's, laid a blanket down and he's sitting where Thaddeus Grunwald was sitting because they needed some space to lay out that other driver.
Yeah.
And most people know how to drive an automobile, so either one of the people in your expedition or you yourself have taken control of the wheel. But anyhow, he remarks that 120 years ago, Napoleon captured this city while he was staging the siege of Acre. Just kind of interesting,
Well, that's his problem.
What?
He shouldn't be focused way the heck down here. He should have been paying attention further north.
Well, I mean, it was a staging area. He only held it for a day, though, and then he left.
Yeah.
But
he's way away from where he ought to be. No wonder he lost.
he just was conquering everywhere.
He went the wrong direction.
When he woke up in the morning, he spun in a 360-degree, and he's like, I shall conquer in that direction. However he might sound. But yeah, he mentions that. He's like, yeah, this place has been ruled by Canaanites, Israelites, Romans, Byzantines, Muslims, Crusaders, Kurds, Mamluks, and Ottomans, and presently the British. And Napoleon even took a crack at it. But, he's just making some idle conversation. Seems to be his forte, his history, as you guys pass through this gate. He does make some mention about how the original city was destroyed by the Ottomans and rebuilt in this location. And much of the city was modernized by German Templars who built that power station. He points to a steam-based power station and opened other factories. But you guys roll in to where you can depart from this convoy. Unfortunately, the attack has delayed you enough that you won't be able to board the train tonight. You'll have to do it in the morning.
Okay.
So you'll have to find some lodging here.
Yeah. Mr. Thompson, can you see to that? I need to see to getting Thaddeus situated for his journey back home.
I think he took a work call.
Okay, well, he said yes. I'm confident.
Okay.
And so I'll go see if I can find someone, who can preserve the body well enough for travel, and then arrange to have it shipped back to Massachusetts. Now, I didn't know Thaddeus very well, but I mean, if I'm guessing if I had to choose, we would want like a Christian.
Yeah, so, in this era, you can probably just have the corpse preserved and shipped somewhere, right?
Yeah, okay.
As they would do with lots of corpses in the Great War, they had to be maintained until they could be sent back across the ocean, that sort of thing. So they have the ability to do it.
I guess you could also wire the university.
Yeah, I'm going to send back a report
to,
I guess, the university would be the one. Unfortunately, he's deader than hell. Got his stupid head blown off.
It's going to be a closed casket.
He's going to be eaten by a locust on the way back.
Then you'll form some sort of weird locust hive mind, though. Yeah. You got to be careful in this universe.
I think I was thinking about it the other day. It would be the Arabian Peninsula's like rainy season. So this would be the time where there aren't locust swarms. So it would go into another meme factory for Thaddeus Green. Goes to study locusts when there are no locusts.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Well, what is it? He'd scout out potential hatch, I guess, maybe. Yeah. But yeah, he's definitely got some problems, poor guy.
So yeah, you go about doing that and you're gathering his effects such that he had, which were, notebooks and certain reference material about his chosen field of study. But there is one interesting thing that catches your eye, although you don't really know what it means. But there's an odd, like, statuette or idol amongst his belongings. He has, like, a canvas bag, that you would lash closed, but it's partially open and you can see the head of it sticking out. So it would be familiar to the player, although not
the character.
To Mr. Wentworth.
I ain't seen nothing.
Show it to you.
Okay, I see that. Looks like it's holding its willy under the belly there.
Yeah, but the particular style of this one strikes you as...
Not holding it, it's like highlighting it. Mm-hmm. Look here.
Check this out. Dead center.
It's got that smug look on its face. Oh, man, where are you showing us this?
But it bears a resemblance to some of the things you had come across in your time in the Mexican desert, right? Because you were in, like, New Mexico and across the border a little bit. Were you, like, during the... what were they called? The name escapes me.
Like Texas Rangers? Or are you looking for something else?
No, they had this whole plan for, getting that part of the southwestern America back to the Mexicans. And they had a name for this group of people because they were trying to get all the Anglos out.
Oh.
Which is where, like, the conflict came during the time you would have been in that area.
Yeah.
But they had
I don't know.
It escapes my mind at the moment.
But I just am, like, during this period in real life, frequently, well, more than once, the U.S. Army ended up chasing...
Right. Because they would raid
bandits into Mexico.
Ranches.
Yeah.
So they had Rangers and U.S. Army there to protect the people down there.
So that's what I did after the war.
Yeah, so anyhow, it looks like some of in that sort of style. But other than that, it can easily be arranged just at a cost, which I will note on your expedition balance sheet to arrange for the care, preservation, and transportation of Thaddeus Grunwald. What did you want to wire back to the college?
Yeah, so, regrettably, Thaddeus Grunwald killed by bandits. Well,
It happens.
Yeah.
Stop. It happens. Stop.
Yeah, just like a succinct explanation. That he was unfortunately murdered by lawless bandits, and body will follow.
Right. Well, Curtis Cooper comes up at some point looking to have gathered himself while you're getting his effects packed away to be shipped off. And he approaches you and he's like, Mr. Wentworth, can I bother you for a minute?
Yes, what can I do for you?
Well, at the risk of sounding naive, I was wondering if you might give me an explanation for the execution of that brigand, for my telling about it, for the SEU files. Something a reader might understand, because I'm not arriving to that conclusion on my own.
Well, if I tell you,
Yeah.
if I tell you something, you must promise not to ever tell anyone else.
That's a difficult promise for me to make.
It is, but I accept your promise.
And you're bound to it.
Between you and me, once I got into the trees, I let him go.
Oh, is that the case?
Yeah.
So it was all theatrics, but for who? For whose benefit?
Well,
The one who got away?
Right. There might have been people watching. His compatriots might have been watching.
Also, you're a leader of men, and you need to show strength.
But those in the convoy, they would want revenge, and I needed them to think they had received it.
I see.
Let me put it to you this way. Let's say there was a young professional soldier with the convoy who didn't perform admirably during the firefight. Then someone like that might wish to take an execution into his own hands in order to make up for his failures, and he wouldn't be likely to show mercy. Do you see what I'm saying?
I see. That does make a certain kind of sense. Thank you, Mr. Wentworth. But of course, it's all a lie, isn't it?
Yes.
That's not what he says.
is.
He's just,
Oh.
we're just going to see how well you sell it. Now, there is no lie skill in this, so it just comes down
Persuade.
to either persuading or charm, whichever one you
Or
want.
intimidation if you wanted to take offense to.
Okay. So let's try charm and persuade. Charm.
That's only 2. Gotta spend that luck before you get...
Yeah, can I spend luck to charm
Yes.
him into believing me?
Do I look like a man who would execute a young boy brigand regardless?
Yeah, so the lucky part is, he was aware of who was supposed to be the authority not behaving appropriately and a way to protect, so that the story of the French soldier kind of helps to sell this idea to him, and he looks immensely relieved. But you have to wonder in the long run of this type of journey if that's going to do him any favors.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll
but
see.
it solves the problem for now,
Right.
for sure. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, which is what lying is for.
Right.
Yeah.
Solving the problem right now.
And he's like, that's something I could never think of. Like I said, I know I'm sounding quite naive now, but thank you, Mr. Wentworth. Have a good time dealing with this corpse.
Yes, it'll be a blast.
And that's pretty much it for what happens in Haifa. We can, if you're back, John, you had gone off and sent by Mr. Wentworth to find lodging. You can now return to him if you'd like.
I found this weird frog hotel, looks like.
And you can give me a spot hidden when you come around. It'll serve as our, if you ever.
My eyes!
Oh,
my eyes!
Get those out of the way.
They took
Yeah.
my eyes.
If it
We obviously got to also get medical attention for these 2 people that are wounded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the doctor was able to handle the leg wound one well enough, and Thompson, once you gave him an order, he just unplugged that hole and let the guy bleed out to go handle it. Not really, but he took him off somewhere. Him and this stranger doctor were able to get him to the medical attention he needs. But so anyhow, yeah, you come in, you're just looking, and you see that idol poking out of the bag now.
Yeah.
Mr. Wentworth has kind of just set it in a crate while he's looking for the other stuff. Like he's sorting amongst what was in there to to figure out which tags belong to Grunwald so he can make sure he gets it all back to whoever might want it. But you see that idol, and you recognize it immediately from your recent readings of the Liber Ivanus.
In Thaddeus Grunwald's belongings or in somebody else's?
Yeah, his belongings. It's in like a canvas bag. The head part of it was poking out, and you know immediately to which figure that references. And we'll get just a small sanity roll.
Fails.
Well, you know, part of you being an unbeliever is that you're able to easily discount the stories told in this book, but to find a separate confirmation of at least an aspect of what's in the Liber Ivanus just randomly like this just does a small 1-point hit from your sanity. But it does kind of send a shiver up your spine because the story of Cthulhu is not a nice one. And these idols
It's all
carried by his...
out loud, well, not like, it's normal speaking volume, but just like talking to myself out loud is, what was the fool doing with this?
Yeah, you remember from your reading that it puts the bearer under Cthulhu's influence in a way that was difficult for you to understand, but it also would bestow what Ibon described as a divine hunger that satiates both thirst and hunger. And the story that went along with that was just the tribal people that had come under the sway of one of these idols, and they just lived by eating the dirt of the land and, performing sacrifices to the idol.
Those fairy tales and fool stories. That's all this is.
Yeah, that's the conclusion you arrived to, but for, a brief few seconds there.
It could have been real.
It could have been real. All right, Mr. Thompson, did you want to do anything with that knowledge and the presence of the idol there?
Okay, so he told me about this?
I think he's just
mumbling
to himself.
Yeah.
I think he did say aloud that what was the fool doing with this?
Yeah, so, I know from stories I've heard about these sorts of things. Not this one in particular, but when he's clearly disturbed about it, I'll ask him about it directly. So what is this, and why does it disturb you so?
I'll relate my knowledge, such as it is, as just a story. Yeah, this is one of the older deities or gods that some people worship. Something about never being hungry or thirsty. As dirt eaters, that's what the story amounted to. I can't believe that somebody so educated believed in this.
Where do you suspect he might have come across something like this? It reminds me of Mexico.
And I would imagine it. He wasn't out of our sight very long. It's probably something he brought with him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering where he originally acquired it.
Do I have any knowledge of that, Travis, from the book?
Where it was acquired?
No, where the Cthulhu story, I guess, originated. Is there any information about that?
No, not it's. He was described as a being that was here before, humans or mankind, right? Something above. And the places that he was referenced as being, you have no idea. Like Inkai, you don't know where that is.
Would an archaeology roll tell me anything about this particular statue?
Yeah, I could probably tell you where it was fashioned.
Oh, nice.
Very nice.
Yeah, so this is like from indigenous tribe that would have been on the New Mexico border, the present day one. But it's in that style. I would say you're not versed well enough to pinpoint the tribe. You just know the group of peoples, various indigenous tribes in that area that's in their style. So you'd be able to date it to like 500 years old, maybe, in that range.
Okay. But when Thompson saw it, he said, why does the fool have that or something like that?
Yeah. And part of the sand loss is this probably an unconnected thought in the back of your mind that's remembering Thaddeus's affinity for fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I don't think his family will miss it. I want to hang on to it for now.
Okay.
Dr. Andrews might have more information about this sort of thing. because he had encountered
Yeah.
idols of different sorts. Like, I know the story about him going to that one police officer's home where they had some weird idols and the wife was eating sewing needles and weird things. So I'll just hang on to it for now. His family won't likely miss it.
They're going to sue you for taking their idols. That was our son's possession.
Family heirloom.
Don't tell me that you believe in this as well.
Well, no, but it is interesting. And it does remind me a lot of the sorts of works that I saw in my time in Mexico. And Dr. Andrews might have more information on it as well. So, I mean, I am studying archaeology. So, but you read about it.
I mean, it can't be.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like that was all the book was about.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't doing any like study or research on it. I mean, it was a piece of the history of this in this book. But I mean, are you sure that it's even that old? I mean, I would think that this is something you pick up when you're visiting a foreign place, like those small pyramids that I'm sure we're gonna find over in Cairo, or the chance to buy a Egyptian pharaoh over there.
A sphinx.
Yep.
Well,
mini sphinx.
You could very well be right, but it is my estimation with my study in archaeology, such as it is, that it likely is around 500 years old. So I'll keep it until I can speak with someone more knowledgeable to prove me wrong.
Yeah, you would gain this knowledge by the style being from dead tribes, basically extinct tribes. It would either have to be a recreation. Obviously, you're not like able to carbon date this or something like that, but just it would go in by the style, right? And it doesn't look like recreations usually have signs of where there was molding or something like that, and that doesn't seem to be the case with this one. It seems to be more carved out of a piece of limestone.
Yeah, to my half-trained eye, it appears genuine.
All right.
It's interesting.
Oh, I also wanted to send a message while I was dealing with this to Stanton. Tell him we've been delayed a day.
Bad, but we have one less person.
Right.
Changes the accounts on the amount of food and stuff. Good.
Yeah, no, I'll just attacked by bandits, delayed one day.
And you'll get that on the following day. So, Mr. Thompson, did you want to continue your study later on the armor of the will?
Yes.
Your third day studying? Okay. So, for today, if you pass a Cthulhu mythos or occult or extreme education roll, we can learn something more about it. Whatever's your best shot.
Got it.
Oh, wow.
Extreme education.
Nice.
Okay. So, in this part of sort of rereading how this spell is to be cast and all the ceremony and the background that Ibon gives on it, Ibon explains that the earth is, and he's using like analogies. It's like an island in a vast ocean, but there's other islands that exist elsewhere across this empty space. And between the islands are phases and planes higher and lower than our own, where natural laws may operate parallel or perpendicular to what is above and below. So with your education, you kind of get what might be an ancient's rudimentary explanation of, say, the galaxy or the universe, right? Okay. And he goes on to describe that what these spells do is harness a power that is true for all universes and planes, and yesterday, and today, and tomorrow. And that truth, like I said, often runs counter to how you're traditionally trained on stuff. Like things that might be true for your moment in time, you have to set those aside. And so he says that all humans, to a greater or lesser degree, may tap into this great unutterable truth, because ever since, or basically some ancient beings tweaked our natural evolution during experimentation with our early ancestors and tapped us into that. So what this kind of gives you in game terms is an understanding of this reservoir of power that you can tap into to cast this spell, and about how much you would need to, right? Difficult to convey in a more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like story type way of saying it. But basically you get that for each magic point, you spend, you can add a 1d6 to the amount of armor gained in the casting. That's what you take away from it. Basically, the gist is the more you put into it, the more you'll get. But there's a little bit of variance given things beyond our control that would make it more or less. So it's not always a one-to-one representation of power invested to output. And his final statement on that is, who can understand what the gate and the key understands? What mortal could? But you can write that on your character sheet. I think it has a magic point spot, right?
For spells, right?
Yeah. Okay. And we'll leave you guys there at that hotel in Haifa as you get some rest and await the morning train to Cairo, finally, where you will arrive in the evening, the following day, late in the evening. And sticking with the 20th, we'll head over to Mr. Stanton.
So it's the 20th?
Yeah, where he's languishing away. Perhaps still the 20th for you.
Okay.
And you had sent off a request to your man and your logistics man to inquire about the flora and fauna of the region, as you had been stumped by your small library and your own knowledge, and he returned a short report to you. The biggest and most important question is what can be hunted and killed in the Arabian Peninsula, and what can hunt and kill you. So very little lives in the desert, as you might expect, that qualifies as game or would be threatening, but there are a few creatures of note. There is the Arabian oryx. It's an antelope that might be found in the rocky part of the desert or on the salt flats amidst the great sandy dunes, and could provide welcome relief from camel or rations. They can go weeks without water. It's one of their features. There's also the Arabian wolf. It's the smallest of the gray wolves. They have larger ears than other wolves, which allow dispersal of desert heat more efficiently. They should not threaten a party of your size, but hungry wolves do make risky decisions. And there are goats, of course, as there always are. Goats are a dangerous thing to kill, you have learned in tribal country the hard way, because they matter to the local tribes. Not quite as much as the camels, but they still matter. Some of the hazards include the deathstalker scorpions with their powerful venom. Although most survive the sting, it is excruciating. The peninsula also has black widows and a fine collection of vipers and cobras. Scorpions and spiders are a nuisance, but snakes are the bane of anything that walks on 4 legs or 2. They will be more of a threat to the camels, so a few extra riding camels might be something to consider. Serums obtained here, as you know, are likely of no use on the Arabian Peninsula. So if you want to go that route, you would have to wait till you get there. And you happen to be looking at this report in the cafe there, having a lunch with Ibrahim. And it's just a quiet lunch. You guys have a pretty long-term, easy relationship where you spend most of it in silence, unless something important needs to be said. Just enjoying your meals and you looking over your report. But you glance up over the page just in time to see Ibrahim's eyes widen and an expression come over his face you have never really seen on his face before. He's not one for being shocked or taken aback or put on his back foot, but he definitely looks that way now, and he's looking past your shoulder behind you.
I'm going to reach for my gun.
Okay.
And I'll start turning around.
Okay, so you turn around and you see the other people eating in there. There's no man with a scimitar or a rifle bearing down on you. Instead, you see a woman, carrying a tray with food that she's delivering out there, an African woman who has a very similar expression on her face when she sees him. And they're both kind of standing there, or she's standing, him sitting, just looking at each other, shock-faced, but not speaking at the moment.
Ibrahim, perhaps there's something you should go take care of? I'll ask questioningly,
That is my wife. And you're like, you've never heard that before, that he even had a wife.
Well, you seem to share a similar expression I do when I see my wife, but...
Dear God, what are you doing here? This is the villa you bought for me, husband. I didn't expect you to be in this room, though.
This is my room. So again, Ibrahim, congratulations on a reunion.
Yeah, he's like, if you'll pardon me, boss, it's been many years.
Of course.
So he stands up to go speak with her. But you like, just glancing at it, although I don't know how you are about eavesdropping or giving people their privacy, so I'll just give you the information in a glance, and then we can go from there.
All right.
She has, as wives sometimes do, a a complicated range of emotions on her face, but it doesn't seem to be mostly pleased to see him. So, anyhow, but they go off to have their moment, and you return to your report.
I'll turn to, oh man, I can never remember his name. Fettuccini.
Yeah, I can't remember it either now. Francesco.
Oh. See, boy, that's what a woman does to a man. I've seen him stare down lions and shoot elephants. One tiny African woman, and he becomes gobsmacked and fearful. That's why one should never settle down. Just sow your seed where you will, and
the most dangerous creature, and she's on every continent on this earth.
That's right. And they'll wait for you to be asleep after years of trusting them, and they'll drive a dagger in your heart or pull the trigger and send a bullet through your brain.
But aren't you married?
Yes, happily so.
He kind of scratches his head.
3 amazing children as well. I wouldn't trade them for the world, even though that older one seems to be a bit slow.
Darn older ones.
Not unlike you, Francesco.
Well, you carry on with your day, and you go on to other matters. And by the end of the day is about when, or no, it won't be until the morning where you get that thing. But Ibrahim does eventually come back and kind of give you the gist, is that they were married in their tribe when he was young, right? They were married by their tribe, sort of an arranged thing. But the tribe was nearly annihilated, and his wife, whose name is Adimu, was taken prisoner, as was he. But he escaped and lived like, a wild animal for many months, but was recruited by the German East Africa Company to do his Askari warrior thing, and that's where he kind of picked up his skills. So that was like 15 years ago, he says. And he didn't expect, given the nature of the slave trade in the area, that she would even be alive, right? But this does present me with a difficult problem, boss. Now that I found her, I hesitate to lose her again. I try not to ask much of you, boss, but can I bring my wife with us?
How dare you? I'm not opposed to that, but wouldn't it be safer to just send her back to the estate than take her out into the desert?
Well, that's sort of the problem, is all that slavery's been abolished in recent years, so she has to work on her own. And
Well, I'm just talking about my estate.
Oh, right.
Like home.
I mean, there's some logic to that. You can see him sort of fight like the...
It's your wife. I
Right.
won't deny you the right to take her wherever you deem, but there is danger in that as well.
Yes.
I'm fine with it, but I would prefer it if you thought on it. Perhaps send her back to the estate.
I will think on it. It just does not seem right to send her off again.
Also, does he share a room with me, or does he have his own?
I think you guys were sharing one, or he had, like, these suites have, like,
Multiple adjoining rooms.
an adjoining room
All
for
right.
serving
Okay.
men and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm fine with that then. I was going to see if he wanted to get his own room.
Right. Well, he's probably going to have to re-get to know her.
Yeah.
Maybe not. We are married after all, but he says, yes, I will think on it.
Very well.
This is the same day, so I don't have the message yet. Am I
No.
expecting them tomorrow?
You were expecting them early in the morning,
Tomorrow.
but it will actually be late in the
Okay.
the day tomorrow because of the delay. But
All right. Well, just have your decision made. Our boss should be arriving in the morning. Very well, Ibrahim. I give you the rest of the day free.
thanks, boss.
No problem.
I'll fist bump him.
Boom. Yeah. So we'll close the 20th then there, unless there's something else of particular note you want to do. Otherwise, you're just busy with the presumed arrival of the rest of the expedition tomorrow.
I like to think that over the course of what is about a week,
Yeah.
Stanton he started off sitting upright in his chair, but these days he's like slumped all the way down, and he's just occasionally like blowing his mustache outward and then like exhaling plumes of smoke and drinking more.
Deep depression. I'd rather be at brunch with my wife.
There's nothing wrong with brunch. It's when it becomes a weekly occurrence.
All right. With people you don't know and don't care for.
And Donald have to murder.
All right, so moving over to February 21st, which is a Tuesday.
Well, for me, it's a Tuesday.
Mr. Thompson and Mr. Wentworth board the Taurus Express again. It's departing at 8:30 a.m. in the morning to arrive in Cairo by 10:30 p.m. In that journey, The only thing of note that occurs for you, Mr. Wentworth, is that Dr. Francis Morgan wants to know how long we'll be in Cairo for.
I have no idea. Once we link up with Mr. Stanton there, then we'll get more information. He's the man who'll be leading us on this expedition, and he's been making preparations. So when we link up with him there, we'll find out what state the expedition's in and when we can depart.
Okay, that sounds good. It seemed like it would be a shame if we just get there and turn around and leave again, given it's Cairo and everything. You have much interest in ancient Egypt?
Yeah, not when I'm on an expedition to someplace else.
Yes, I understand.
Business first.
All right, well, thank you. Enjoy your lunch. And Mr. Thompson, I'm assuming you will continue to learn about the armor of the Wills as well?
Correct.
Okay, so for today, we can do a Cthulhu Mythos or a hard intelligence roll.
Nope.
Okay, so the part you're trying to figure out today is how long, once cast, that this protection will last. And Ibon seems to reference the setting of the sun as the point at which the spell will end, no matter when it, was cast earlier in the day. But you're having a hard time coming up with a definition of what they mean by setting of the sun. I mean, it's easy just to say when the sun sets, but do they mean, as it's setting or after it's setting? You're just not entirely sure. And you have this kind of idea that hangs out in the corner of your mind where the burgeoning mythos believer, that 1% of your mind back there, the one that remembers Thaddeus Grunwald's obsession with eating fruit and these odd occurrences that remind you of what you've read in the Liber Ivanus, is somewhat worried that if you don't get it exactly right, it could be disastrous. You might be expecting your protection to carry on as the sun sinks to the horizon, but you're not able to make sense of it, basically, at least not without pushing the roll or spending a lot of luck.
I'll let it settle for now and revisit it.
Yeah.
Another
well,
time,
there's
probably.
kind of a wager you can make, a cautionary principle you could take with that knowledge not being understood, that as long as you don't plan to depend on it well before sunset occurs, you should be okay, right? That kind of skirts around the whole issue, but it still does leave a question for later.
Is what casted after sunset?
Yeah, it's one of those things that you don't know. Like, you're pretty certain that if you cast it in the morning, then for the majority of the day you'll be okay. You just don't know when, for whatever reason, it will dissipate.
Don't want to.
The gun start counts at gunfight starts at like 6:59 and sunset is at 7:07.
Anyway, we can make that 12 o'clock. All right. So there's nothing else for you two that day unless you have some odd question or thing that you want to do aboard that last stretch. Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, I'm good.
Any fondling of the idol, Mr. Wentworth?
No, I'm just storing it for now.
Okay. All right. Over in Cairo. Today will mark the arrival of the rest of your party, although you just received the telegram of the unfortunate events that befell. And
yeah, I think I'll have the the strip of paper or whatever that the wires usually came on, and I'll be kind of like gnawing angrily on my cheroot while I'm reading delayed. One person down, that's a good thing, because I just transfer all his food over to oh man, I can't remember his name all of a sudden. The
Baram Ibn Salah.
Oh no, I gotta add
Jackson Elias.
Jackson Elias. I gotta buy more for Ibram.
Yeah,
or whatever his name is. Yeah,
Mr. Salah.
Salah.
Yeah. So, and also, there's the I don't fully understand Mr. Stanton. Who could? In some ways, he's unknowable. But there was also a gunfight that you weren't able to be a part of. Does that hurt him in some way?
Like, I joke about it. Technically, no, it probably doesn't.
Yeah, any rational person probably.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so, I mean, it doesn't really change your plans too much for the day other than you have more time to do it. And you probably likely won't depart aboard the Nemean Lion, which is the ship you had chartered to cross the Red Sea to Yemen, that late at night, although you could push forward if you wish to. But also of note, today will be the last opportunity to acquire sophisticated gear, likely. So if there's anything... Now, I've made a lot of assumptions on stuff that you would likely gather based off of your occupation, but if there's something you very much want to make sure is there, then today would be the time to think about it.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those, like, I leave that up to other people.
Right.
Maybe I'll go looking at some point, but for the most part, I don't really actually know what I might need or not. So I'm just going to hope for a luck roll, I guess,
Right.
when the time comes.
So
Are there water purifiers? There's not too much water out there, though, so...
no,
you know.
and usually, and the water you'll get will usually be clean anyways. It'll just be
They'll be filtered.
filtered, right?
Yeah,
is what
through-
you'll need to do, which you have all the knowledge and techniques to do. I mean, you might even know how to do like a solar cell type thing, but it's not cell. What is it called? You guys know what I'm talking about. Because you could do it on a canvas where you collect dew, right?
Yeah, like a condensation.
It's just that would only let you survive. There's even if everybody did it, it's always a losing battle to do that. It just lets you survive
Yeah.
minutes or hours longer, days sometimes. Yeah. Anyhow, you have the stuff to do that.
I'll add, if I see him at some point, Ibrahim will be, and I figure he already knows it, his wife is his responsibility, but she still is going to take up a spot for food
Right.
and water, so she's going to have to be added into that as well. So I'll make more notes of that.
Yeah, and speaking of that, he does seem adamant that she does come unless, you wanted to try to persuade him out of it more, i.e. with a skill roll. You can, just from knowing him for so long, there is a lot of irrationality to that decision, but also it's difficult in your experience to come between a man and his wife.
Yeah.
But it's also difficult to have a woman in an expedition of this kind.
Well, that's kind of what Stanton's more concerned about. When you're going out into a more tribal area, you're going to run into problems. Also, when you're with a bunch of guys, you're going to run into a bunch of problems. So, but yeah, he's going to have to just keep an eye on her.
Okay. Yeah, he's adamant for that decision.
Now watch the only survivor. One of us players is going to be Ibrahim's wife as she comes out of the desert a couple game months from now.
A scion of Sathagya with full power. Anyhow, you are approached by Barum Ibn Salah today, inquiring if he can bring his telescope. It weighs about 25 pounds. It's small, but I do know that space is a concern on these.
Pack it on your camel, and I don't care what you bring. Yeah.
Do you have much interest in stargazing, Mr. Stanton?
Absolutely none outside of navigation, Mr. Sala.
That does make him laugh, like a full belly laugh, but there's something unsettling about his laugh. You're not sure what it is. You can't quite put your finger on it, but the fact that it totally takes him over and sort of like, it's
Almost
kind of like a madness in
I was
a way.
going to say like maniacal.
Right.
Or,
Yeah.
that's probably the wrong word, but manic or mania.
Yeah.
Mania. There we go.
It's the complete like loss of dignity and decorum.
He's just braying.
You're right. Yeah. At your blunt answer to it. And he's like, well, I can respect that. It's not for everybody, that's for sure. But if you ever change your mind, I'll have my telescope, and the desert will be a prime place for gazing.
It most certainly will.
And I will leave you to your day, Mr. Stanton.
How is Matt Vanya doing?
Well, he's recovering. It's going to be slow to get him back to 100%, but he could journey now, assuming he's not going to be out digging ditches or...
Excellent, Mr. Sala. You've already proven your worth.
I didn't mean to interrupt him.
No,
but-
that's cool. You're like, enough of that. My guy, how is he? That's right. Yes, he's doing well. In game terms, he's going to recover a hit point a week, and
Okay.
he was pretty low. So he would be easy to like knock out or kill again, but as far as having the full function of his body, he's there. So yeah, he gives you all that, don't go poking in the trepanning holes or anything like that. And he should be okay. Sorry, I got a dark sense of humor.
Dude, we could pour boiling oil into it.
Do some science? Ah, fellow scientist, I see.
Oh, I just heard a story from some Chinese guy who ate monkey brains, and they cut off the top and they just dump oil into
To
it.
fry it up,
Yeah.
and then eat it up.
Yeah, just
Huh.
scramble some Russian brains and some cooking oil, and away we go.
It's a ration right there.
All right, so yeah, he's thankful that he can bring his thing, and he will assure you that it won't be your problem. He'll carry it with his stuff. And one of the ways that you guys do this, aside from water, you found it's best to have the men carry their own rations. So when, he should have room for a couple personal effects, because what can occur is you get separated, and then having these, like a common food camel or whatever does that person no good,
Yeah.
So you carry, every man carries about 14 rations on his camel, which, like 30 pounds worth of food. Water's a little trickier. They usually only have like a day's worth because it's just too hard to carry otherwise. But we'll move on to the next day then.
I'll be carrying powdered water.
Yeah. And
Save space.
Dehydrated water.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
one of the things you might be puzzling over is Mr. Wentworth got a keg of whiskey, and I was like, how much is a keg? So I had to come up with a smaller keg because there was like more than a camel could carry. But
Like I bought my my uncle
I was thinking
who
of a little.
right, yeah.
I bought my uncle one about like that for like aging the moonshine he makes. So
Yeah.
we could test it out. Tiny little one.
Well, the standard little oak barrel the oak barrel kegs they would transport the whiskey in back in that day was like 600 pounds or something like that. It's a huge freaking. And I was like, that's probably not what he means. But I still gave you a lot of whiskey. I think you have, it takes up a camel. And I thought that was kind of funny. It was an important thing to keep track of. All right, so moving on to Wednesday, February 22nd. Well, actually, before we do that, 10:30 p.m., your train rolls into Cairo. And
If I know about it, I'll go to greet.
yeah, it comes, and you have like the train schedule, so you know it's expected arrival. So you don't have to wait very long if you show up around that time for them to come in.
And unfortunately for Ibrahim, I'd have had him prep the men if they wish to do an inspection now or in the morning. So
Okay. Yeah, so we will cut to the arrival of your train in Cairo that evening. You can see the lights of the city. The pyramids are a dark pyramid shape in the night sky in the background, the backdrop of Cairo, and it's quite an enchanting thing to view if you've never been in it. The whole ride in the evening as you come to Port Said and cross over the Suez Canal there on your way to Cairo. It's like you've read and heard so much about it because like now it's fascinated the culture of that time, that to actually be there is sort of a weird experience. But your train pulls in, you walk out with stiff legs from having been seated for so long to Mr. Stanton, and you wanted to have Ibrahim with the men all out there?
Not in the station, but
Okay.
like wherever it is they're staying or taken to a location where they can be inspected.
Okay.
But Ibrahim will be with me, and so will Francesco.
So yeah, you see Mr. Stanton, who you know by description, perhaps even a picture, if that was afforded to you, standing next to a black man and a young boy. You'd say about 10 or 11, maybe even older. How old was he?
Around that age, like
Yeah,
I think you said he was close, like in this era, like a man technically.
like right on the
So,
verge
like,
of it.
13, 14 probably.
Yeah, and he had a quite a distinguished or an easy to remember description given to you by Dr. Andrews, so you can pick him out of the crowd quite easily when you see him there with the big old beard.
Yeah, I'll be dressed in like, like maybe like a brown and cream colored, like semi-formal, like they'd be wearing like a suit like they'd be wearing in most of the time in this era.
Right.
And I'll be looking for him.
And then there are porters and handlers to take care of your luggage, and it can go wherever you need it to go.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll approach, offer my hand, say, Mr. Stanton, it's good to finally meet you in person.
Mr. Wentworth, I assume.
Yes, sir.
Pleasure.
Can I use my gun skill to just size him up without like going into like deep psychology?
I'm trying to. What's your line of reasoning for it? Do you think?
Seeing if it's like noticing like the 1,000-yard stare, or
Okay.
or how he handles himself. Does he walk away that a gunman would? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
It could all be like.
Do you carry a sidearm as well? I think you had one, right?
I do have one, yeah.
Yeah, we can do that.
And
Sure.
I
like
prefer my knife.
it doesn't really need to be like based on like any thing in like realism or science. It's just how like I don't know if Stanton would size someone up psychologically.
Right.
Right.
No, I get it. You could have, because everybody would judge somebody on how they might, where the position of their they keep their sidearm or their knife or whatever, right?
Yeah,
So
how he walks, does he,
Yeah.
yeah.
because it always gets down into do you put your right leg through or your left leg when you're putting on your pants? Which one's the right way to do it? So there's an aspect of that you'd make a judgment call on.
And like, it's one of those where I don't really like, unless you want, I don't really think I would necessarily be aiming for a skill roll,
Yeah.
right? I'm just aiming for, like, this would be how Stanton judges you. Are you a gunman? Are you a fighter? What
Right.
are you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you want one?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, really?
Wow.
I think he favors that knife a little too much.
Well, it's not quite a fumble yet. I mean, of course, you could push it if you'd like.
I'll push it. We'll see how it goes. Maybe that's how... Wait a sec. What's the penalty?
Well, I'll say there'll be something unlikable about how you see, like something that you don't have a preference for, and in fact have found it to be the sign of a lesser warrior.
And
right?
it just compounds
Yeah.
as the trip goes. All right. I hope I don't hate you, B. Here we
Yeah.
go. Nope.
Wow.
I look in his eyes,
Bad impression of me.
and I just do not like what I see.
It gave you a warning, though. Why would you have done that?
I'm
What?
stiff-legged from the journey,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Oh, he walks like a."
What I would say is so you have known there to be warriors who spend no time to the dignified aspect of being a warrior. They're just all about, whatever works for them, and you find that to be a lesser expression of that, right? Like they don't have any care for their weapons. They don't, or they're run down to your eye or your expectation. They're of a lower quality,
And it
or
reflects on the person.
Right,
If
yeah.
your weapon's run down,
Yeah.
you're run down.
So you're seeing a lot of this in the small things you pick up about Mr. Wentworth, but most of it, in actuality, is just the difference in the culture that he had a different route than you had when it came to war fighting and whatnot, and he was influenced by the area in which he fought, both in the Great War and
I'm sorry.
amongst the Mexicans, because every warrior with his salt will pick up the way his opponent does it if they do it better than they themselves do, right? And you don't respect a lot of what you see on that.
Yeah, okay.
So if we want like a concrete example of that, it could be maybe the knife is just ostentatious. It's too big.
Mhm.
It's like it's unwieldy. Like why would you even
Yeah.
carry something like? Because you have like a Bowie knife, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like an American.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
You're just trying to give the semblance of somebody who's
All show, no substance.
yeah. So that's the thing you.
Thankfully, I think he won't be surprised at the look in Stanton's eye if he's talked to Dr. Andrews at all. So,
Yeah. No.
but yeah, I'll shake his head or his hand.
You're foolish. You can give me a psychology roll though, Mr. Wentworth. We'll see how much of this you pick up.
And instead of saying like, pleasure to meet you or anything like that, I'll kind of,
All right.
And then I'll turn my gaze to John's character.
Well, he has a harsh look that does not discriminate at anything that he looks at. So you think the what you catch in his eyes is just because he happens to be looking at you when he's introducing himself, and he would look at the train or the boy next to him or random passerby or a horse or a burlap sack the same way, right? So you can't really read much into what had just occurred for Mr. Stanton.
Yeah.
Now, standing next to Mr. Wentworth is also Mr. Thompson, who seems to have the air
Was
of...
I made aware of him as well?
Yeah, you knew the count and the names of the people.
Well, I just want to shake the hands of those important.
Yeah.
And if it's only Wentworth, then that's all I'll really worry about.
Well, Mr. Thompson is kind of like what would you call it? The informal right-hand man to the right-hand man of Dr. Andrews, in a sense.
Okay.
A guy that has proved himself so far useful to Mr. Wentworth because he knows how to deal in a way that is escaping Wentworth's abilities. So how do you do that, Thompson? You see the introduction go down between these two men. Mr. Stanton has no awareness of you as a person or anybody else there. You're like an important feature, not in a specifically singling you out to insult you sort of way. Just he doesn't count you as those who are important. But Mr. Thompson, you are a salesman. Are you going to just let that be for now?
I want to. We'll turn the tables here. I'll be watching the introduction closely with my dead eyes to see how this first meeting goes.
You could give a psychology, see what the exchange...
Success.
Yeah. So you know when somebody looks at something they're looking to buy and they don't like what they see. You see that all the time. And you can tell that Mr. Stanton does not like the look of Mr. Wentworth very much.
Okay. So, yeah, I'll step up and introduce myself then. And, I don't know, could I use I guess like a persuade in a way to almost give off the image of what I figure, what Charles Stanton was looking for in that first meeting?
You can definitely intend to do that, but it's a role, a player thing. So only if you guys mutually want the guide point for how to behave.
Well, what I'm thinking is trying to save the first meeting here, right? As even if you don't see what you wanted in Mr. Wentworth, as maybe rest assured that he puts the right people forward or into his party to make sure that everything goes well.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely choose that tactic. I just can't, force Mr. Stanton to go by your persuade roll because it's an RP thing,
Yeah, go for it, man.
It's up to him.
Right now, I think we need to build a bridge.
Well, he's a persuasive character, no doubt, Mr. Thompson. I don't know what that means to Stanton, though.
Stanton judges all people the same.
So,
all right.
You wear a sidearm, right?
Yeah, that would be the next thing. You're ex-military, right?
Yeah, I do have a sidearm.
So oh man, that 1,000-yard stare, I think, is what
did it?
Would sell it for Stanton.
Yeah.
Right, he's seen it. Not saying that Bartholomew doesn't have it, but there's just something.
It almost should be reversed since
it should be.
Joseph Thompson has an Italian handgun at his side.
That's true.
And the disparaging thing you said about Italians, you should.
Now that is something that it could be. Is I'm actually trying to judge their character. So
right.
I failed in judging Bartholomew failed to live up to mine. So it's one of those where like that can actually RP wise mean whatever I really want it to be. So,
but it was tried and true European weaponry, which you would be more familiar with. Many of the officers that you have dealt with that were Italian, had that, so about what its capabilities are. It'd be less so about the newer American. And it's not weaponry.
I'm not. Maybe I said it wrong. I'm not trying to judge their guns. I'm actually the content of the character based on a warrior or a gunsman.
No, I get it. It's like it doesn't matter what the weapon is. It's like how they would be.
Yeah. So something just went wrong with Bartholomew.
It was that darn big knife. What a waste of metal. What is this? The Middle Ages?
It's useless. It's good for only skinning, or is it not skinning? Scalping women and children. So whatever, something.
You got a savage leading this expedition.
She's not cultured.
Sometimes you need a savage man for a savage place.
Mr. Thompson, pleasure to meet you. This is my man, Ibrahim. He's my second. He's in charge of most things in my stead. I believe we have the men ready for inspection if you wish to view them tonight. If not, we can have them find their bunks, and we can have you find yours.
Yeah, let's just do the inspection before we leave.
All right.
A lot of tired people here.
Should have done it right then. I'm just kidding. I don't know what Mr. Stanton would think about it. I'm just assuming that maybe he doesn't have an idea of what the right foot forward would be, but he knows it's not going to be the one you put forward. Okay, so yeah, just make it to your guys' rooms after the introductions. All around, it goes as well as can be expected, given the fumble there. And you guys make it back to your rooms for the night. Now, anything before we move on to the 23rd? No. Sorry, the 22nd, officially. All right, so Wednesday the 22nd, your day begins early because now you have to get all this pieces that you've had sitting around, waiting to move in motion up to Port Said and on the Nemean Lion. You got to get all the men prepped, all your individual concerns prepped. So it begins early with a breakfast if you wish, as they have buffets going down in the Shepherd's Hotel restaurant. But other than that, you can go about your inspection if you'd like, Mr. Wentworth.
Yeah.
That's, I think, what Mr. Stanton would most be anticipating.
And with me, I'll bring all of the logistics listings and whatnot on what all I've gathered and think we'll need for the expedition.
Right.
To wow and dazzle after the inspection. But yeah.
So he shows the men to you. He just has them assemble in the courtyard there, and you can walk up and down and look at them. Some of them are named, so like you see Ray Flanagan,
smelling of whiskey,
with an insolent look on his face because you're not his superior.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever the result of your inspection is matters very little to him, And then you have next to him Marco Ramiro, but a couple of machine gunners when you see them. They have a particular vibe.
Right.
I'll also be going down. I forget which gun that most of the men will be armed with.
The Enfield.
Yeah.
So I've outfitted most of my men with Enfields. We all share the same ammo because of that. It makes it easier.
And it shares with the Vickers gun, too.
As well as the Vigors.
Right.
They're all trained in various militaries from around the world. I don't discriminate in that matter.
Yeah, Ray's Irish, Marco's Spanish, Ibrahim's African of some sort. And then you see the Russian Matvey, who has a bandage around his head and some yellowing bruises on his face. And the most miles in his 1,000, or the most yards in his 1,000-yard stare, right?
Yeah.
This is the newest addition to the unit. He had a bit of a problem him and Flanagan took issue with each other at first. Hopefully they have exercised
Just
that.
a simple disagreement.
Yeah, which wouldn't be unusual
It happens.
to the type of war fighting you did, where you guys were out on your own a little bit away from.
Yeah.
Standard fare.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the unnamed members of Stanton Expeditions, although one does catch your eye because he appears to be Mexican, and obviously you fought amongst them.
Yeah.
He's actually the cook of your group, Victor Andrade, but he doesn't. I mean, he notices some things about you because there are certain things that you picked up from fighting down there that would clue him on to the region that you were from, like certain pieces of gear and whatnot. I don't know how much of that you had in your mind for Wentworth, or if he just stayed.
I mean,
with
I probably would have lived in that general area.
You might even have an accent.
You wouldn't notice much of a difference between like people live in southern Texas and northern Mexico. You wouldn't notice much of a difference. So
but it might be you picked up a pouch that was more useful than the standard Army issue one.
Yeah,
and they were a little bit more lax about that.
Yeah, no, I imagine like when I'm not in the military, which I'm not, I would dress a lot like how the Mexican people dressed, with their style of boots and things like that.
Right.
So.
Anyway, I hope they're to your liking, Mr. Wentworth.
All right, so I'll just I'll walk up and down and look at everything, get a sense of.
Do you have a skill here
the
you might
equipment.
want to take a look at the skill sheet?
No.
Just make sure that you find them wanting every single time that you do this.
Mostly
explain
it'd
that
be
they're
that
pathetic. You've seen a harder bunch of soldiers or all the harder bunch of men in your grandmother's nursing home.
Right.
We'll reduce our contractual
Yeah.
agreement by 20%.
They're all fired.
Well, I mean, you're looking at irregulars, but then again, you're not really looking at a fighting force.
Right.
These men are here for different skills.
Yeah.
Although also because they can shoot a rifle mostly straight when required.
Yeah. No, like I'm just going through the paces because it'd be disrespectful to do otherwise.
Right.
I'm not like Stanton's a professional, so like I'm not going to spot anything that he wouldn't have.
But
Importantly, they're loyal,
right,
mostly.
yeah. But you see they all have their own version of grit. I mean, there's a couple newcomers. I don't know if they come out to the inspection like Jackson Elias, or he couldn't really make them come out. They're just sort of globbed on there.
Yeah.
But you'll be introduced to them, either at breakfast or on the ship, so you meet like a doctor wearing the Coptic Christian cross around his neck.
Mr. Sala, I was lacking a proper surgeon, and so he graciously volunteered. You can see his handiwork with Matt Vanya over there.
Oh, I see. Well, it's good. It's good to have him along. I thought of a skill, so when I'm inspecting everything, I will use my desert survival, see if the equipment
This is
that they're
where he gets
bringing.
to find me wanting.
Right. Okay, yeah, go for it.
If any of all the things are likely to survive a desert expedition, right?
Yeah.
Hard success. Maybe. Oh yeah, this is not sealed against dust.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there'll be... Well, there's a couple ways to look at it. There's what you can go with your pre-planning knowledge, and you do see some things you could kind of shore up based off of your experience. But the main thing is it's kind of a crapshoot, because it's like, I'll use an analogy maybe everybody doesn't understand, but when you're baby proofing, it's easier just to follow them around and shore up what you want them to get into. So it's kind of like you don't know until you get there.
Yeah.
Especially if you're unfamiliar with the piece of gear that they have,
Mm-hmm.
So, but to your eye, and you can give me your survival skill. So we'll see what Mr. Stanton, you can roll your desert survival. We'll see if there's anything you've overlooked.
I don't like my survival skill at all.
Well, you hire experts for this.
Yeah, I do. No. So yeah, there's probably something.
Yeah, so there are some small details that you reckon Stanton or whoever he's had overlook or oversee this decision making has missed. But you still must acknowledge that he does mostly understand the nature of desert survival and traveling through a desert, as he's probably gone through the Sahara, I think, which was close to him or into it to varying degrees. All right, Chris, so the way we'll do that fumble is I just want, as a role-playing guide for you, to think poorly of Wentworth, to second guess what he does long enough for there to be an in-game outcome for it, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you remember when this kind of happened to the Jenkins brothers in a way, and so you kind of took the whole group off course for a while, right? And that kind of set the conditions for there to be a brush fire accident for, who was it that got winged? Was it Justin's character? Yeah. So that's the kind of situation I'm looking for. So just keep that poor opinion of him long enough for there to be some sort of in-game outcome. And then once those conditions are met, you can begin to adjust it before then, but first impressions are hard to shake, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be like, well, he may be an okay guy, but he just doesn't know anything about that. Right?
In his journal, I just wrote that I don't like him in the slightest. That said, I'm a businessman and a professional.
Right.
So long as he leaves me to my job, nothing should really arise from it.
And it obviously wouldn't be the first time you'd just be grinding your teeth while you're following
hates everyone,
right.
So
they're telling you to do this thing, the correct way to do it, but they're paying the money. So
are the people that I brought here at this inspection?
Yeah.
I'd like to introduce him.
Yeah. Okay. So
to Stanton, so they know who he is. And
well, let me finish up the introductions for his end of it, because you also have Jackson Elias, who shakes your hand with a big smile, and he says, "Oh, you're a friend of Dr. Andrews, as I understand it. Correct? How is the old doctor doing?"
Quite well. When last I saw him, just recently, he's doing well.
Yeah, he writes me quite often, but he's a reserved man. Do you find that to be true about him?
He seems to have become more so.
Well, that's hard to
reclusive.
imagine.
No, yeah, he seems to have become more so, and he spends a lot more time alone than he used to. But he has weighty matters on his mind. It was his idea that I undertake this expedition.
Well, he did
instead
seem to have a good head on his shoulders, so if he vouches for you, then I'm going to sleep a little easier, I think. I was planning to return back there and maybe get in touch with him again, but it'll have to wait till after this whole shindig is done. But perhaps the three of us can get together and have a nice dinner when we're all back. stateside.
I look forward to that.
All right. So on Wentworth's side of the expedition members, he's kind of going, introducing them all to you. This is the guy that will be keeping us safe. Mr. Stanton is the guy that will be keeping us safe, and he knows all the ins and outs. So you have Dr. Francis Morgan, who, while he is an academic, he doesn't really fit that part very well by looks. He looks more similar to Jackson Elias in that field work seems to be his forte.
Okay.
And he's got a quiet, respectful way about him, although not what you would call passive exactly. Just some people know enough not to say a lot, right? Next up is Curtis Cooper, jug-eared journalist from the Miskatonic University. And he launches into sort of wondering if you might be able to pick your brain. You see, Mr. Wentworth has allowed that he can write some documentation about this journey to be published or to be kept in the archives of the Society for the Exploration of the Unexplained, a term you've heard before but was easy to forget, but you remember...
Rupert's organization.
Yeah.
Or whatever he belonged to, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah, we got a picture of him up there on the wall. But yeah, he won't let me publish in any of the papers, but he said it would be okay if I kept something for the archives there. But the more I know about the people on the expedition, and it would be better for the story. So if you could carve out a bit of time, that'd be very helpful, Mr. Stanton.
I believe that we probably would have some time on the ship ride. As for now, I'm currently busy ensuring that we have all the necessary equipment and gear ready for the trip.
Of course, I understand. Later when we have the time. Nice to meet you. And then next up is Bo Whiteman. He's wearing that hat of his with the big old instantly no psychology roll needed fake smile, the kind that just makes your skin crawl.
Yeah.
But he says, "So you're the fellow that's gonna protect all of us, huh?"
I'm going to try.
Well, let me have a look at you. Kind of looks you up and down, and he's like, "Well."
Does he get a fumble?
Well, you look the sort, I would say. I can't grab his accent for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's nice to meet you all the same.
Yeah, likewise.
So this is the guy Wentworth would have said he's with Standard Oil of New Jersey. He's interested in perhaps a prospect while we're out there. And the next step is Nigel Stedford, where when you guys meet, there's a warbling in the air around you.
Beautiful day.
Yeah, it is.
Draw.
But no, he says, Stanton Expeditions. I've heard good things about your organization there, Mr. Stanton.
No need to lie. It's not a good way to introduce oneself.
Was it Stedford?
Yeah, Stedford.
Mr. Stedford.
Oh, no lie. I never want to give credit to people that are in the same occupation as I. That would be bad for business, I would think. What kind of piece do you carry?
Oh man, what would Stanton Main's main weapon be? So he would probably Metro Express was 1895, so probably
My preferred is a 375 H&H Magnum.
Very good.
And yourself?
Yeah, he pulls it out of his waistband. Big. He's like, oh, well, I think it's actually just a Colt single action army that's custom made. The bunt line special. They just put a longer barrel on it. For who knows why. I couldn't really ascertain what purpose it served.
Fine craftsmanship.
Yeah, but
Though not as good as...
on the unspoken end of things, I've already described, he does have sort of in his idle resting animation, or in a lot of his other animations, sort of a Ponce-like way of doing things, you know.
So,
yeah, which is a sort of antithesis to the Stanton method in a way. You might not take it badly or anything like that. I'm not saying that. It's just not how I envision Stanton exactly.
yeah.
But it sort of speaks to at least a higher level of breeding in the British system. So maybe from some minor family connected to royalty, although not quite of the line himself, would be your read from that. And that does it for the introductions. I think that's everybody aside from the unnamed NPCs, the 2 Stanton oilmen, and so you're all introduced, and you guys have your breakfast, so you have the fuel for the day, and you start into a flurry of activity of making sure that everything gets to where it's going, which, as anybody knows, even planning an excursion for, say, your family, it becomes, check this, check that. We overlooked this. Did you get that? Everybody's going this way and that. Although, to Mr. Stanton's credit, he'd had an abundant time to make sure as much was in place where it needs to be, so that you guys can get everything aboard the train by late morning, which means you would arrive in Port Said in the early afternoon to depart on the Nemean Lion in the Red Sea by late afternoon. And the Nemean Lion resolves itself to be a rusty steamer, although not necessarily it being a bad thing. It just means it's well used. And certainly nothing like the steamers you guys came here in. And the captain's name is Ilkner. He's a Turkish captain, the owner of the ship. And he greets you all, or the principal figures, so Mr. Stanton, Mr. Wentworth, as you guys board, and instructs the porters and the men of your group who are helping to move all the gear in there, which turns out to be quite a bit, even at this stage. It's pretty much everything that you need to get here that you wouldn't be able to get in Yemen, so you're still missing like the bulk of food.
Mm-hmm.
You have some
Camels,
provisions, the camels, but it still does end up being, several hundred pounds worth of gear.
Yeah. And also, like, I made note of it a while back, but like trade goods that are non-perishable, which I'll discuss with Wentworth as well at some point, which is just set aside a decent chunk of change for non-perishable tradable goods to barter with the Bedouins.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also during that day you receive word back from Dr. Andrews about, well, it was kind of a difficult concept to get across in the confines of a message that had to be kept brief. But, you were relaying the idea of baksheesh and the fact that when you get to Yemen, you'll likely have to interact with the ruler of Yemen to pass through their country with, unmolested. So one of your companions had brought it to your attention that you might need something to offer that would appease a king. And he had given you the idea of something to do with the relationships between his newly established country and somebody in the United States that might legitimize his rule in the eyes of the world stage. And you were at a loss for what to do about that, but perhaps Dr. Andrews could.
Mm-hmm.
And for his part, he responds back that he doesn't know anybody like that, but to give him some time because he has lots of connections. So maybe something can be arranged.
Also, I had that egg from the Russian that I was hoping to get rid of before we left Cairo or send back to the estate to have that sold in a more prosperous country. Yeah,
the offers that Ibrahim's ran by you here are less than you would hope to get.
Okay.
So unless you're willing to settle, you'll have to try to sell it in a different market.
All right. What would my best chances of transporting it be back to Africa, like Morocco,
right,
to have it sold there?
Well, just hiring you basically are paying to make sure it's secure. So that's the more you do on that, the more expensive the shipping, the more secure it'll be. Right, you can even get things insured if like they're appraised, they're worth what you do. So
so I'd do that, and take out a chunk as need be to have it done.
Then have your remaining members of Stanton Expeditions attack it while it's en route and just collect the insurance. Easy way to liquidate some assets.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that can be handled and arranged. So all those little tiny matters can be worked out. And like I said, Dr. Andrews says he can do something about that. And you asked him also about the idol of Sathagua, and he says, yes, I recognize that by your description. We came across many of those, although they were from the Spiro mound builder cultures, which were a little further east than how you described this one as far as the cultural flavor to it. He does convey that doesn't necessarily mean anything as far as its potency. Well, how do you think he would respond? Do you think he's just, because he's aware that they came across some that were made like yesterday, according to them, and some that were found in the mounds of an ancient Native American peoples, from long, long ago.
Yeah.
And both of them seemed to be effective as far as they knew.
Would he beat around the bush or just be up front?
No, he would say dangerous or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as far as Dr. Andrews' exposure to these, they connected the bearer or the people in the vicinity of it to this figure. But also, as far as you know, this figure has, that's kind of stopped as far as you know.
Yeah.
Because you guys almost directly confronted Sithagio, or at least you think, or at least you were in his lair, and you blew it up. Basically, you didn't quite go in; you just blew up the area surrounding it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He, based off of the things that he's seen, he would say it's dangerous to have it around you.
Yeah, danger. Okay. Before we close up the session, Mr. Thompson, why don't you give me an intelligence roll, also known as an idea roll? Okay.
Can I use luck or push?
Yes.
What's consequences if I push?
Mistaken ideas.
Yeah, we'll go the luck route.
You do have an abundance of luck.
I do.
Cue the Jack Nicholson smiling, nodding gift.
Yes, do it. All right, so there's, like I said, you have this 1% of your brain, the believer in the mythos, where most of you is not a believer, but you can't help to connect this idea, or to have this weird idea that if you go into a place that is scarce on food and water, wouldn't it be useful to sustain yourself in another way? And we'll leave today's session with that thought bouncing around in your head. You're thinking of the dirt eaters.
That's actually pretty genius if that works. Yeah.
But yeah, you did pay the luck for it, so it's not like a fumble or failed push, like really bad idea. This is actually a keeper hint to some way to tweak the system that might be helpful. Not to say it won't have devastating long-term ramifications on the course of the campaign, but thanks for playing, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There's the chance of cannibalism being part of that role. So.
Well, there's a lot of men in the expedition.
What's the name of the ship we're getting on to go across the
The Nemean Lion. This has been a Deathwatch production. Thank you for listening.